Welcome to the Book Club Life, where we talk a lot about books and a lot about life, and sometimes have awesome author interviews. And today I am so excited to bring you Erica Vetsch, who wrote The Lost Lieutenant and a ton of other books. So if you are new to the show, whenever we do an author interview, I ask her questions using themes and quotes from her own book, and then she has to answer them and share about her life and experiences. And then you can join in with a comment, or you're free to use these questions in your own book club. So let me just tell you a little bit how I found Erica, and then I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing.
Okay.
Before we get into the questions. But I saw Erica on the ACFW Gala Awards night, and she won award and then another award. And I just remember thinking, wow, she has done really well. I went back to try to look these up to see exactly how many it was. I didn't find them all, but I found one where you won 2 in a row. And so I wrote down her name, and then a couple of years went by, and I kept seeing her, and then she had a sale on this book, and I actually told my friend who's a reader, I was like, oh, do you like Regency books? You might like Erica Vetsch. She's really awesome. She wins awards all the time, and her book's on sale. And so I saw her again a week later, and she's like, oh my gosh, that book was so good. I actually read the whole series in a week. Wow. And so then I got that book and read it myself, and I'm now on book 3. It is awesome. This is The Lost Lieutenant by Erica Vetsch. So that's how I first came to know you. And
well,
Erica,
cool.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and a snippet about the book too.
Okay. I live in Minnesota, in Rochester. I'm originally from Kansas. I married a Minnesota boy, and he brought me home. My part-time job is company bookkeeper for our family lumber business. And in my spare time, I do some handcrafts, and I watch a lot of sports.
Okay. So my family is also from Kansas as well. My parents met and fell in love in Kansas, around the Paola area. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yes, I do.
But so yeah, go Chiefs.
Absolutely. It's a long time coming.
Oh. Okay, so my first question for you, Erica, in The Lost Lieutenant. I loved the main character, and I wish I hadn't even said that he was the main character, because I hate to give away anything, but I think this is okay. I think you can find out some of this in the back. But I really loved him, but he is a war hero. So he sometimes suffers from anxiety symptoms left over from the battle that he was in. And have you ever struggled with anxiety attacks? And then what brings you peace of mind? And then also I jumped ahead, so tell us a little bit about the book and then answer the question.
Okay. The book is set during the Regency period, which is the first 2 decades really of the 19th century. It is set in England, and it involves a Napoleonic War veteran who performed an act of bravery during battle, and he did a favor for the Prince Regent, and as a reward he is made an earl. And he has no memory of the event. Which ties into the story as he comes back to his own memories. And then he also inherits a bride at the urging of the Prince Regent, so it's how they come together. Evan does have what now we would call PTSD. At the time, they didn't really have a word for it. Sometimes we called it shell shock. Going back a little further, the French called it something called, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, vent de boulet. It meant the wind of the bullet. It's like you heard somebody shooting at you even though they weren't. So it wasn't something that was diagnosed, and people tried to keep that sort of thing secret, because any sort of mental abnormality, they would pop you into an asylum.
Yeah, that would be really scary.
So Evan is very much trying to keep his anxiety a secret from anyone around him. As for myself, I don't know that I've ever had like a full-blown panic attack. I have had, moving to Minnesota was a little different for me, a little bit of like seasonal depression.
Okay.
I could definitely tell, not getting enough sunlight. That kind of thing. What I've learned for myself is I need to focus on things that are hopeful, right?
Okay.
And I also to get out of my own head to do something nice for someone else, focus on someone else, helps me a lot with that.
That's really good. I've heard Joyce Meyer say that before too. If you're struggling with that, just to get your mind off yourself, go help somebody. And yeah, so that's good. Okay, so there's a character talking to herself, and she's chiding herself a little bit, and she says, you should be thanking God. You should also be giving your thanks for finally having a prayer answered. And what prayer has God answered in your life that was very meaningful to you?
Actually, it came to me a realization. I'm kind of spiritually ADD, you know.
Okay.
When I look back, I can see how God has answered prayers, but in the minute, it's like, are you there? For years, we prayed for my children, for those people that they would marry, right? Because it's such a huge decision in your life. And my daughter just celebrated her first anniversary, and her spouse, her husband Benjamin, is he's considering seminary.
Wow.
Right? And that was never really on our radar, like she had to marry somebody who wanted to be a pastor or anything.
Right.
But I realized that we're watching the unfolding of all those prayers that we had for a man that would love her, a man that would follow Jesus and be a good leader in the family. And just really rejoicing in that and seeing how God has worked in her life.
Yeah, that's really neat. I often have to remind myself, I am living the dream. Like, this is the answer.
It is.
Like, I have a great husband, I've got kids, I have enough money to buy food, and I have a home to live in. I don't need to worry about everything else. I'm living the dream. And just to stop and be like, thank you, Lord. Thank you for that.
Yeah, gratitude is always appreciated.
Yes. So I'm going to read a quote. This quote really stuck out to me and made me think. So I'm going to read it to you and then ask you a question about it. God hates a coward. And this character said it out of the corner of his mouth as he's like plunging in to do something. So now that is just something that the character said. That's not in the Bible, that God hates cowards. But the Bible does talk about conquering fear. And there's a story in the Bible of somebody with talents, and the one that buried their talents and didn't use them at all was not the one you wanted to be. You wanted to be the one that did something with what God gave you. So, and then also more recently, I was reading a Laura Ingalls Wilder book, and one of the very brave characters, people, because it's based on real life, but says that as he goes off to do a risky life thing that he could have died from, and that's like his oomph to go do it. And so I was going to ask you, what do you do when you face a task or situation that seems monumental and it makes you just want to shrink away in fear? Just the thought of even trying is so scary. How do you encourage yourself, and do you have an example?
Really, any daunting task. Sometimes sitting down to write a really emotional scene or a pivotal scene can paralyze me, because I know so much in the book is riding on this thing. I have been known to clean a lot of sinks and organize closets, and so it's almost like I need a little room, a little headspace to live with that scene. And then finally, you just have to do it. You have to dive in. And I tell myself, I can't edit a blank page. I can always fix it later if it's not. For life situations, I find getting a different perspective. So I'll ask my husband, or I'll ask, a mentor friend at church, if this, how should I attack this thing? And usually they're seeing it not as a mountain, they're just seeing it as something you do. And so getting a little bit of less panicked perspective can help me. And then strategizing, making a plan.
That's good.
If I can see it, I can do it.
Yeah. So just do it. Borrow some courage from a trusted friend
else.
And make a plan. That's very smart, very practical. So here's another quote from the book that I thought was sweet. They're talking about a house, but I thought it applied to life as well. So here's the quote. I know the place looks a bit of a disaster now, but it's got potential. I really think we can make something fine here. So I love this line about that house, but I think that's true about our lives too. Sometimes we look at our lives, or someone may look at their life and be like, oh my gosh, this is a wreck, this is a mess. but there's potential. You can make something fine out of it. So have you ever felt like a disaster, or maybe someone you love, and were you able to make something out of it? And how?
There are days. And again, it's I don't know if it's part of being the writer, the creative thing, but I can go back to something that happened in 3rd grade. In the middle of the night, I'll be thinking about that thing, and it's like, oh, I would have done that differently. I do wish that I could edit like I can my manuscript and manipulate things. The change doesn't rest on me a lot of times for those kinds of things. And I don't have to change somebody else. If I think somebody else is a disaster, it's not up to me to try to change them or make them better.
Somebody needed to hear that. That's good.
I pray and let God do what God does, right? Because my idea of how they should change may not look anything like the way God wants them to change.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and acknowledging to myself, it's not wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
You know, there's more than one way to accomplish this life. So
that's good. I like that. So every life has potential, no matter what state you find yourself in, and even different days. Just when you haven't had sleep, or you know, for women, there are certain times when you feel like more of a disaster than other times. Okay, another quote from the book. His father had cautioned him that marriage was built day by day. And I like that line. Your marriage, you build it day by day. Your life, you build it day by day. You don't snap your fingers and arrive. So how do you build your marriage, and how do you improve it if it's lacking?
One of the key things I think that my husband and I do, and we've done it for more than 15 years, is we have date night every week. Since my kids were old enough to stay by themselves, because when you have young kids, you can't always afford a babysitter. You can have dinner or a babysitter. We have date night, and what I love is that it's not something that I'm pushing my husband to do. He's as invested in that as I am, so that, like, we're here this weekend, I'm going to miss Friday night date night. He will make it up. Oh, wow. Yeah, if I get home on Sunday night, he'll say, you know, tonight's date night, because we need that time to check in with each other, how we're doing. The conversations, sometimes they can feel a bit repetitive, because, you know, when you have kids, you're going to talk about the kids, you're going to talk about what's going on at church, or, you know, but those are our times to check in with how each other are doing. And just sometimes you spend an evening maybe sharing some memories, like how you met, or college, or whatever, and you remind yourself of why you love that person. You know, if things get a little bit rocky, for me, it's communication is key. It's not fair if I'm harboring something that he's doing that I don't like, and he doesn't know about it. Right. You know, so I can say, you know what, when you do this thing, it makes me feel this way, and then we can talk about it. Yeah. And he's a great listener, and willing to exchange those things, so that if I'm doing something that's driving him up the nut tree, right, we can talk about it and try to either alter perspective or alter behavior on it. So that's good. There's another couple I know that they're elderly now. Oh, I won't say their names, but they have the sweetest relationship, and they've always treated each other so well. And that is a piece of advice that they always had, is date every week. Make time. You don't have to do anything fancy. You can just be going on a walk in the neighborhood, but make time to be together every week. Absolutely. And you can leave in the comments, leave your marriage advice, some little tip that somebody gave you or that you found out yourself. We'd love to share the love here. Okay, so one more question before we move to the Just for Fun section. Okay. Evan hated it when the truth rose up and smacked him in his face. He hated it even more when accusation of hypocrisy in his thinking was true. Can you think of a time when the truth about yourself smacked you in the face? Oh my. And Evan is a little picture of me, because I don't want to have wrong thinking. There have been times younger where I've been sure of something doctrinally. That's just how it was, and this is how it was always going to be. And it was more of a clamped down sort of legalistic view of something, and then I realized that there's quite a bit of hypocrisy in that way of thinking, and I was expecting people to give me grace and mercy, but I wasn't willing to be gracious to them. And again, going back to that, it's not wrong, it's just different. The difference between a conviction or a proclivity or desire and true biblical doctrine or a mandate. And that
That's
it's
good.
humbling.
I remember a time that I had gone out to eat with some friends, and there was a couple people there that I didn't know, so I knew like half of them. And I remember thinking later, there was one girl I really didn't like, but I couldn't remember which girl it was. And I don't know why I was even thinking about it, but I just felt like the Lord was like, why can't you just say it was neither one and just forget about it and don't think about that? Treat that whoever it was that I couldn't remember the way you would want to be treated, because what if I had an off night? I wouldn't be wanting someone to judge me based on that one conversation. So anyways, but I was like, not in the face. God doesn't smack you in the face, but it
Sometimes
was like,
he has to, but
you know, to get our attention. Well, if you are enjoying this interview, we would love it if you would give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And now we're going to move to the just for fun questions.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Have you ever been in a book club, and can you give a book club tip for someone wanting to start one?
I have been in a book club.
Okay.
This one, I've been in a couple. I had a church book club for a while, and I read a lot of fiction. My nonfiction tends to be research for the books I write. And it seemed like the books that we were choosing for our church book club were usually like real heavy on doctrine, you know, and they wanted to be really deep about it. And I struggled with that one. So I think if you're, be clear about what your book club is going to do. You know, I have an online book club that I was in for a while called the Dewey Decimators. I love it. And it was a book club designed for books you either haven't read for a really long time or should have read by this point in your life. And the parameters of the group were very clear. A new book every month. The first 2 weeks of the month, there are no spoilers. You know, but the last 2 weeks of the month, anything is fair game. So you can discuss the book. And I met a lot of really nice people doing that, but I also read some books I should have read before.
That's
So,
cool. I like that idea. So have clear parameters and maybe stretch yourself a little bit.
A little bit.
Okay. And then my advice would be, make sure that if it's your book club, make sure you're enjoying the books. So one thing I like to do for my book club is I will bring up 3 that I'm really interested in, and we'll just vote. So I know that no matter what the choice is, I'm going to enjoy it. And that gives everybody some ownership, but then you don't end up reading things that you just don't have time for, you know. Of course, sometimes you can still pick a dud, but that's life. Okay.
But some of the best discussions come out of why you didn't resonate with the book. So
that is true. That is true.
There's always value in it.
Definitely. Yes, those are some of the. An author you love is blank because blank.
Probably one of the authors that influenced me the most when I was a teenager. She was a Presbyterian minister's wife from New Zealand, and she used to write the really old, clean, sweet Harlequin romances. Her name is Essie Summers, and she wrote more than 50 books, and she was like forever one of the best-selling romance author. What inspired me was her real love of her country, and the stories are set in New Zealand, someplace I didn't know anything about. But they always had a subtle faith element, and they're very. She was a great wordsmith. She used wonderful, interesting words that fired my love for interesting words. So, yeah, don't despise some of those small, lesser thought of kind of, because there's treasures in there.
Definitely. And so, are those still available if somebody wants to go?
You know, if you want to find them, you can find them on eBay, or they're not still in print anymore. But they were written the 50s and 60s. But it took me years to complete my set. But I have a complete set.
That's a treasure. I have some Grace Livingston Hill that I loved. I didn't get into all of hers, but there were some that I thought were the sweetest, most romantic. Did you have a favorite?
I loved The Christmas Bride, and I loved Partners.
Oh, I haven't read either one of those. I'll have to look into them.
Those were my favorites.
My favorites were Crimson Roses, which was super romantic. and sweet, but I would even let my 12-year-old read it. So it was like old-fashioned romance,
Yes.
you know, so sweet.
Very courtly.
Yes. And then I think the other one was called Marcia or Marcia Shire. But we'll put the links
we're
in the
gonna
show
have to
notes.
look for that.
And I loved that one as well. So, okay, so you write, actually you're very widely written. Is that how you would say it? So you've got a lot of country and Western, I think would be the word for it, books, but also the ones I have read are Regency.
Yes.
So if you lived in Regency times, what would you love and what would you hate?
I would hate the lack of air conditioning and public convenience kind of things. I think I would enjoy there were social parameters for people and a clear standard of behavior, like chivalry was expected from people, and it seemed like church, even nominally, was a way of life, you know, so it didn't seem as secular.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would like the societal norms.
Just everybody being sweet to each other.
Yeah,
instead of
hopefully.
just slamming the door
you know
in their
that
face without even...
that there were individuals that were not as sweet,
Yes.
but the expectation was that you were going to be mannerly.
Right. Whereas now, I remember I was at the donut shop and this like teenager boy opened the door for me, and I wasn't even pregnant. When I was pregnant, that happened a lot. But I just wanted to be like, oh, you are wonderful.
Yes.
If I had it, you know,
tell
like,
your mom way to go.
Right. But I didn't. I just said thank you.
Don't want to embarrass him. Then
yes,
never doing
then
it
he'll
again.
never do it again. Yes. So, what are you working on now, and where can people find you?
Okay. I have a book releasing November 16th. It's the first book in a new series, but it crosses over with the Lost Lieutenant and that Serendipity and Secret. So you're going to see some of the same characters.
Which, let me stop you. So I loved The Lost Lieutenant. I just loved it. And then book 2, I think I might have even liked even more. I was hoping it would be about a certain character, and it was. I was like, oh!
Yeah, that's the first time one of my characters has ever become a hashtag.
Oh, really?
There is hashtag Team Marcus.
Okay.
So
hashtag Team Marcus. So
and
go ahead.
he will show up in this new series. It is a Regency mystery series with a debutante and a Bow Street runner, which was an early form of Scotland Yard, the Metropolitan Police. So it's called The Debutante's Code.
And it comes out
November 16th.
Okay.
So
Yay.
it is available for pre-order now.
All right. That's exciting. That will be on my pre-order list. Well, thank you, Erica, so much for coming on the show. And if you would like to see more of the Book Club Life interviews with other authors, you can go to jennysnow.net and then click on the Book Club Life tab, and they're all laid out there. Or you can just get right on YouTube on the Book Club Life channel and click the videos tab and scroll on through. But Erica, you have been a wonderful interviewee, and thank you for taking some of your time out of today. We're at the Mississippi River Readers Retreat the day before, and Erica made time for me, and she is so sweet. So
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
And happy reading.